Good afternoon, Thomas Vick. How are you today?
I am good. How are you, Seth?
Doing good, doing good. Hopefully, we didn't cut ourselves off in that introduction, but it's a great Friday in the late part of February and just kind of enjoying the remainder of winter, shall we say. Hey, I got an interesting email from
Yes,
the
yes. Cold morning for sure.
I got an interesting email from the Thomas A. Vick Law Office this morning and had some questions I'd like to ask you based on the information you've been putting out on your blog. Very good stuff there.
Sure, sure. Well, what do you want to ask me?
Well, one of the titles to your article, or one of the articles you posted was, do we have to go through probate when someone dies? And we get that question a lot and just love to get your thoughts on that.
You don't have to go through probate. There are ways around it. Generally speaking, with probate matters, there are three ways of going about it. You can have a supervised estate administration, you can have an unsupervised estate administration, or you can settle the estate through small estate affidavits. And that third option is available, and that's a way that you can avoid having to open up a probate case, so to speak. But you're only able to do that when the probate estate is under $50,000 of net value. So you take whatever amount is in the probate estate and you subtract whatever the mortgages or the debts might be, and then the net is what you're looking at. So you are able to do that to avoid probate. So it's possible to avoid probate as far as a court filing is concerned. And then you can also choose to maybe set up your estate planning to avoid probate entirely through a trust or transfer on death beneficiary designations. And certainly a trust is the most optimal route to go as far as that's concerned.
And sounds like it is really one of those scenarios that is highly fact dependent, right? So your situation may vary with that in terms of what might be the best option for you. And there's a lot of factors that go into whether or not you're worried about the probate experience or providing that peace of mind for your beneficiaries.
Yes, it certainly is fact sensitive. Sometimes probate is not a huge deal. Maybe there's just one beneficiary. There's only one beneficiary in the estate. That's a pretty simple one. But if you get family members and other beneficiaries of the estate that are disagreeing about how the estate should be handled, then it can be a pretty difficult process. So generally speaking, I try to counsel clients to try to avoid probate if at all possible for them.
And it gives an element of control from that pre-planning side to where you basically tell things what and how they're what order they're going to go and how it's going to proceed versus kind of playing the mother may I situation with the court. And obviously there's some differences there between a supervised or an unsupervised estate and things, but probably a little more detail than we need to get into today.
Sure.
One question I get quite a bit, Thomas, and I don't know if you've experienced is, if my kids are younger, does the law allow them to just take the proceeds of a life insurance policy or something along those lines?
And the answer is no. You have to have something to catch those funds for the benefit of the kids. We call that a guardianship of the estate for the kids. And while the kids are, of the age of minority, they're not 18 years of age yet. There needs to be somebody to handle those funds for them, and that's if it's through a probate estate. It would be, and you may have some thoughts on this, Seth. I advise clients to set up a trust for the kids to handle money from a life insurance policy, so that a court doesn't have to be involved in setting up that account for the benefit of the kids, that account that's going to hold the funds from the life insurance policy.
Yeah, and that's probably true of any type of asset that would flow directly to a minor beneficiary, even though they're underage. That doesn't automatically mean that those funds are going to be protected. And especially as you have kids who are kind of getting closer to that age limit, that are kind of operating as young adults already, even though they may not be 18, dropping a significant asset in their control may not always be the best or optimal scenario for that, especially if it's as a result of someone passing on. There's some obviously emotional and grieving process that can go through, and buying a Porsche may not be the best thing to process that. So
Right. Right.
just something to keep in mind too, as you're planning and thinking of what would happen in the worst case scenario event of a passing with my young kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those are good points to keep in mind.
Hey, so it's getting to be, tax season. Everybody's kind of getting all their things together as well. How does that work in the situation where someone has passed away?
That's a really good question, and I encourage people to take a look at my blog on my website, viclaw.org, to look at the article. But there are a few points to keep in mind when a spouse passes away and now it's tax time. What do I need to do? And the first thing I would say is to understand that you can still file married filing jointly as long as the spouse was alive for 1 day during the year. So you can still file jointly. If there's a personal representative that is appointed, then that personal representative should handle the taxes for the deceased spouse, and usually that is the surviving spouse. And then there are some other things to keep in mind, like if there were a lot of medical expenses, then talk to your tax person, your tax accountant, or what have you, to see if maybe you can take a medical expense deduction, which can be really beneficial, especially if it's somebody that's in long-term care. That can really help them out quite a bit. So yeah, I encourage people to take a look at my blog, whether it's through the blog digest that many people received in their email, or just go directly to my website, viclaw.org, and check it out, because I think there are some good points to keep in mind there.
Yeah, and this is another area that is really fact dependent, because there's also some discussion that probably needs to be had among the surviving spouse in terms of level of assets being transferred and whether or not there may be an estate tax issue from a federal standpoint. Indiana doesn't currently have an inheritance tax, but as you look at some of those issues, whether or not you need to set out some of the exclusions and or file different types of gifting tax returns and those kind of things, are all very fact dependent. And so those are things that really, even at that passing where it may not look like there's a real reason to get a lawyer involved at that point, might be a good time to just have that call and kind of run through the scenario and look at where things are at that particular time, just to determine, are you moving forward the best way you can. And again, it's complicated, right? It's a very hard time for folks because your spouse may have just passed on, and that's a very difficult time to think through all of these issues. And hopefully the attorney can help bring some objectivity to that and walk through kind of the details of what needs to be done.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it might be that you file married filing jointly in 1 year, and then there may need to be an estate tax return the following year, or it might be that a trust tax return needs to be filed the following year, depending on how the estate or trust administration might go. So it really is very fact sensitive, and you gotta, I encourage you to talk to, counsel about how it should go down. So
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, we talk about this because lawyers have that duty to say, hey, we can give you kind of broad information about legal principles, but really it is a situation where we have to have that conversation and really understand what your asset list looks like, what those debts may be, or incoming bills that may need to be taken care of. What are those other areas of asset that may need to be transferred if they did not have a beneficiary designation or something associated with them, or life insurance policies and those kind of things. So it's always just a good idea to pick up the phone and walk through that with your family's lawyer. And so as we look at that, you mentioned one thing that kind of piqued my interest as well on your blog this week was that medical expense situation. And that's always a tough one for folks as they're thinking about planning for the future and trying to decide, what is the level of fund that I have available to take care of my long-term care needs, whatever those may be, and or where do I fall in terms of maybe getting some assistance for that through Medicaid. And so obviously a lot to talk about there, but give us some ideas of this Medicaid annuity you were mentioning in your blog.
Yeah, so the Medicaid annuity is an amazing savings for people, for a married couple when say one spouse is in a nursing home and the other spouse is healthy. The concern is, how is the healthy spouse going to have enough to survive? The nursing home is, costing $8,000-9,000 a month, maybe more, and the cost is rising. How am I going to be able to deal with that? And with Medicaid, they have a lot of spousal impoverishment rules that allow for protection for the surviving spouse. And one of those rules is allowing for a Medicaid compliant annuity, where a healthy spouse, can purchase an annuity, and that will get the sick spouse under a certain amount of resources so that they're Medicaid eligible. And then the annuity pays back to the healthy spouse, every month or every quarter, the amount that they use to purchase the promissory note or the annuity. And so you're able to shift the resource into sort of an income stream, and it can save a monumental amount of funds for a married couple who are otherwise going through a difficult situation. It's an amazing planning feature. It can be done with a Medicaid annuity. It can also be done with a spousal promissory note. It's really a wonderful thing, and one of the joys of elder law practice, where you can actually, save a married couple's life savings through things like this planning feature.
Well, and that's great. What a great tool to have available. And again, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts potentially to that, and obviously from a compliance and drafting standpoint, would need to have some I's dotted and T's crossed, I'm sure, to make sure that it's compliant and not subjecting folks to trouble later on. And so again, a good thing to talk to your family's attorney about, just kind of look at what those options may be, and if that Medicaid annuity might be something that's a good planning tool for you as well. I think those are the questions I had for you, Thomas. I did want to say our thoughts and prayers with the situation going on around the world, all the leaders involved, and just all the difficult decisions that are being made. It's a crazy time for sure, and just thinking about those affected, and thankful for our freedoms here in the United States. But
it is for sure. I want to echo those sentiments, Seth, and I know that there are a lot of members of the church that I'm familiar with who have been in Ukraine and have worked with people in Ukraine. The church that I go to, the Shelbyville Road Church of Christ, has supported a missionary for 6 years in Ukraine, in the mid 90s. And my dad went over there for about a month when I was very young. And so I do feel a little bit of some connection to the country, and again, echo those sentiments that you have for praying for Ukraine and world leaders that wise decisions are made and that there can be peace.
Yeah. Well, as always, Thomas, I appreciate the opportunity for us to chat. It's always good to see you on the other side of the screen here, but love the capability this technology brings to hopefully bring some more light to what can be confusing, right? There's a lot of options available to folks as they go through their estate planning process. And we just want to kind of let folks know what's available. It's your citizen's law. You should know a little bit about it and know what the options are. And then obviously, meet with an attorney of your choosing to put that plan into place to meet the facts of your specific scenario. So it's great to see you. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Seth.